Welcome to our weekly discussion, Moral Side of the News. I'm Shawn Kaelin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and as always, I'm joined by a distinguished panel. Reverend David Harkleroad, South Point Church, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Father Tony Smith, Archdiocese of Louisville. Super Bowl 58 was last Sunday, and perhaps the most memorable moment of the game was when 10-year veteran Travis Kelce hurled his helmet, screamed, and nearly knocked his 65-year-old coach to the turf with an aggressive bump. Panel, I turn to you. It was the most watched television event of all time. Nearly 124 million viewers, a significant portion of that audience being children, not to mention the new fans this year with Taylor Swift. Two discussion points: Kelce's behavior and the message that sends to our youth about respecting authority, and the turn the cheek response by his coach, Andy Reid.
I think that the problem is the coach is to direct the team. And I think the coaches in the NFL are paid generously, but the players are paid astronomically. And so the respect that a player may or may not have for the position of his coach is diminished by that, and there's really no excuse for bad behavior, and that's the bottom line. Yeah, I know it's a passionate game. Yeah, I know there are millions of dollars involved if you win or you lose, but there's no excuse for bad behavior. And isn't it terrible that the bad behavior all takes place in front of the camera?
My comments would be it seems if you look at any occupation, any vocation, whatever, we have prima donnas in a sense of someone who says, coach, you're a coach, and I'm dating so and such, and I'm also the head person here. It seems like it leads to a sense of greater importance, whatever. What can this team do without me? Well, the team can go on without it. But anyway, I would see it more, I try to take it on a generalized view, not just for football and whatever, but it seems like there's more and more, and even in ministry I see this sometimes too, where the person says, I'm the one who makes the decisions here, you don't, and you should listen to me, etc. It seems in my mindset the bottom line is we're right in trend with American society. We're training ourselves to become self-important and, in a sense, really truly selfishness, rather than, as we would say in ministry, being seen as a servant. Of selfishness, that we are there for the benefit of the team, we're there for the benefit of the country, we're there for the benefit of the sport, for the music, whatever it might be. Rather than that, we say, I am important. Well, right, for a short time, perhaps you are important, but what's going to happen 50 years down the road? Will he be remembered for this or whatever, or will his girlfriend be remembered? I don't know. But it just seems to me, I'm not sure with you, what the message being given is I would see one of becoming more and more, I am important, more and more selfish, pointing toward the self rather than serving others.
Yeah, I think it's a regrettable situation, that it happened, and just agreeing with things you guys said, he needs to be aware. He is a role model. He is on public television. These are things that a guy like Kelce, I think he's in his 30s, he should start to be aware of. And I think that some of what was aired is sort of the apology that didn't take place. He kind of made light of it, and they swept it under the rug. And it's hard to know what that relationship's actually like. Maybe he and that coach do have a great relationship. Maybe to them it wasn't a big deal. But I think that the apology should have matched the publicity of the event. So even if they have a great relationship, it was mended, I think he respectfully could have said publicly, hey, I lost my cool, this wasn't right. That could have gone a long way just to publicly apologize for what he did. And just reading some articles, it looks like he maybe has a history of losing his temper. So I think it's something that, could have been handled better. I agree, it's a high adrenaline game. It's a high contact sport. So I don't think it's just wildly out of control what happened, but I think it was not handled well, and he should have should have given more thought to the action, but certainly an opportunity to follow up and try to make it right.
The 1.2 is it is a team sport, and as important as he might think himself be, and actually be, he cannot do what he does without the team backing him up. And so that, I think that enters into the fray as well, to acknowledge that we have a great team here, besides great players, and a great coach. Now the coach, I understand, kind of took the low ball approach. He didn't come, he could have, you know, if he didn't have a chair to throw like some basketball coaches, he could have something else. But no, I think that speaks, in one sense, speaks more highly of the coach than the player. But at the same time, too, I wonder what was communicated after the cameras were off or so. Because if this catches on to, as you say, in a lot of sports, a lot of events, these individuals think they are in charge. If the coach doesn't address that, it would seem, and a good coach would certainly address that in some form or fashion, say this was uncalled for, this is, I didn't come at you, but let's try to keep this as a team effort rather than individual ideology, as it were, or idolatry, perhaps use that term. Okay.
I think there should be a rule of thumb in all relationships by people who are in the public eye in any way, be it sports, entertainment, clergy, yeah.
Right.
Never, ever, ever believe your own publicity.
Right.
Generate it, it's there, but never believe it. And if you don't believe your own publicity, you're not going to take yourself that seriously. And by not taking yourself that seriously, maybe you won't do something really stupid and really public.
Right, because no one is, in my knowledge, except the divine, is indispensable. And so shall come a time when you will no longer be in your 30s or whatever. You will begin to fail. And then, what's the old saying, as you climb the ladder of success, either treat the steps nicely so they treat you nicely on your way down, or you break the backs of those steps. So that, but then the fall is fantastic. So.
Well, very good discussion. Let's move on to topic 2. Thank you for listening and watching Moral Side of the News. Special Counsel Robert Hur's report on President Biden was in the news this week. Much of the national political discussion centered around it and the scrutiny aimed at President Biden following his report, stating, among other things, that the president would present himself to a jury as a well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory. Debate soon followed regarding the belief that Democrats would ultimately replace President Biden as the party's nominee ahead of this year's general election. One familiar name is popping up on the short list of potential replacements, Governor Andy Beshear. 2 discussion points, panel. 1, how do you see this playing out? President Biden is 81 and would be 82 2 weeks after the election. Do you see him being replaced on the Democratic ticket? And 2, President Andy Beshear?
Can I take point 2? And I'm speaking very personally during the time of the pandemic. My wife and I don't use this word. I don't use this word lightly. Would religiously watch Governor Beshear as he spoke to us every day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon about how things were going throughout the Commonwealth. We got strength, we received strength and hope from that. And that's the way I guess life was 90 years ago with the fireside chats from President Franklin D. Roosevelt. And I felt from that point on, this human being is a leader and he cares about us. And I can't, job qualifications, that's right at the top for me, that this person leads and cares about people.
Well, I would address the first topic first about the aging and whatever. As I advance in age, and some people here can match me on that aging stuff, I see my mind.
You'll always be younger than me, Tony.
Not by much. But anyway, I begin to see my mind getting a little mushy, but that doesn't mean I'm incapable. I mean, I'm called out of retirement to do parishes and all this other good stuff. In fact, it's a little ageism going on for sure. Doesn't mean that President Biden or President Trump at that time either. I mean, both of them are kind of up in age. In fact, some of my brothers would tell you that I want to say that I really, even to this point in time, I'm not sure that either one of those candidates will be there, our candidates for the president. We'll see. But in regards to Bashir, I think what you're saying is true. I think there's leadership quality there, but I think it's, again, too quick. I think he needs to wait a while. We'll have to wait a while. You talk about Governor Newsom, whatever possibly is another option. Okay, at least they have administrative capabilities, et cetera, rather than other individuals. We've had an actor become a president. We've had a businessman become a president. Did they have any administrative capabilities? Well, that's still up for history right now. We'll see in a few weeks when the verdicts come in, et cetera. But I would say the aging doesn't upset me as much if it's between those two. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm one of those independent type individuals. But I would have to, look and see what the platforms would be, continue to be, et cetera. But I would say the ageism is a problem as the more I advance in age, to see people responding. And there are some things that kind of go by the wayside. I can't pull in the names, numbers, and facts and dates like I used to 20 years ago, but they still come after a couple of minutes, whatever. But as far as, I think Governor Bashir will do great service to our society and to our community here by remaining a governor of this state until his term of office is over.
I would make, just to speak back to that a little bit, I would make a distinction between ageism and mental capacity. Because here's my honest opinion. I think it's pretty evident Joe Biden is slipping mentally, and I feel bad for him to say that. But to be kind of, bipartisan about it, we see that in other folks as well in politics. Mitch McConnell is who I was going to say. We've seen him have some issues that may be age related, but aren't inherently the age is not the problem. So I would see a distinction, and I don't want to say that in a partisan way. I think that there has to be some level of capacity, and it seems that the report was correct. It seems like Joe Biden's mental capacity is slipping. What does that mean for the election? It's hard for me to imagine he will have the mental fitness to get through basically 5 more years, the year leading up to the election and the following 4. And I would imagine something's going to change. But I would say that I think that it's not inherently ageism. But I'd also just like to take a moment to highlight that I think we've got to watch for a double standard in the judiciary. There is a presumption in the report as to the motives of Joe Biden. It says, well, he's well-intentioned. That's hard to say if he is or isn't. Donald Trump is a very combative kind of guy, probably not well-intentioned in that regard. But I think what we see is very similar things that happened. Both of them had documents they shouldn't have had, Joe Biden showing them to a ghostwriter. Both of them broke the rules and the laws. Joe Biden is written off as well-meaning, while Donald Trump, they assign different motives. So I think we have to have a consistency in the way that we look at these and we prosecute these things.
Well said. It certainly will continue to be a discussion point as we move forward. All right, on to topic number 3 on this week's Moral Side. A bill would strip candidates of party affiliations from the ballot for Louisville's local elections advanced Tuesday in the Kentucky legislature. House Bill 388 would make elections, including Louisville's mayor and metro council, nonpartisan. It passed the House of Representatives on a 70-20 party line vote. Panel, your thoughts? Good, bad?
I'm sick of our legislature micromanaging the Jefferson County and environs. They have enough to do for the whole Commonwealth. They ought to stay out of our elections. They ought to stay out of our school boards, and they ought to do things that they need to do desperately for the Commonwealth as a whole.
Well, I just learned today, as you pointed out, that a lot of the elections are already in that scenario that they're wishing for. But my routine would be, my concern would be, even if it's you're not listed as a political party member, then how do you, for the voters who are looking at you, how do you establish a base of, what is your program, what are you standing for? If not, if you put out what you really believe in, that's going to imitate, or not imitate, but that's going to point voters towards which party. I'll say, well, obviously he's a Democrat, or obviously she's a Republican, something of that nature. I see concerns in that. As I said, if it's the case, why don't we just do it throughout the whole country to have a nonpartisan, even in the presidential election? I mean, there is a rationale we have, as I understand it, a political party system in this country. And I have no problem with judges or individuals, small communities, or even states, or even regions, or even the federal government showing which party they belong to, because the party platforms are, to me, is just as important, being an independent, as the party itself. What are they actually standing for? And that's what I'm voting for quite often.
Yeah, I'm a Hoosier, so I don't get a vote on this side of the river. But I would generally say I wish I understood the issue a little bit better. I think they'd need to give some really clear evidence as to why this is a good decision. Generally, as a voter, I want to have a really clear understanding of what does this person stand for. I mean, the parties help us understand that. I want to know what's your record, what are you proposing, what do you want to see done. I want to know who I'm voting for, what I'm voting for. So generally, it doesn't seem like a great idea to me. But I guess I would be open to being persuaded, but there'd have to be some pretty good reasons to make that change, in my opinion.
I concur on that.
And I'll go back to what I said originally. I think it's putting undue control by a legislature over a specific area in the Commonwealth. And I wouldn't be in favor of it if it was Northern Kentucky or Fayette County. It's taking away our political rights and responsibilities.
Yeah. And to that point, if they're trying by this legislation to pull out politics from the vote, they're actually doing that when we look at what Frankfurt is trying to say to Louisville, Kentucky, in regards to not just school system, but other different aspects of life too. To your point, I think, Stan, that
it's a form of gerrymandering, isn't it?
kind of, yeah. Well, yeah.
Potentially, it could be.
Yeah, I think because Louisville holds so much sway in the state's politics, to try to have the state government influence the local government.
It's complicated. As
Yeah.
you say.
The fact that it was a party line vote
Yeah.
tells you in and of itself that it's a very political divide
That's right.
in its nature. Very good discussion. On to topic 4 on this week's Moral Side
Moving
of the
right
News.
along.
Moving along. Okay. A recent study revealed Louisville is one of the top 10 cities with the worst drivers. According to Forbes, Louisville isn't just the home for the Kentucky Derby, it's also home to some of the worst drivers in America. Louisville ranked 7th out of 50 of the most populous cities in our country. Why are we such bad drivers, panel?
Can I say again that I'm a Hoosier? I don't have a lot of input on that, but just be safe. It's easy to be distracted. I wondered as I read this article, I thought, does this have to do with, do these safer and less safe cities have anything to do with laws and road systems and some of those things? I don't know what's behind it, but it's discouraging. I would hope that we can improve that as a city.
Was it not in regards like insurance?
It was,
Look at the
it was
wrecks,
fatality. I think it
fatalities
was
type
mostly
thing.
driven by fatalities, distracted driving fatalities,
Right.
and
I
drunk
wonder
DUI
how it would
fatalities.
change if it were just for running red lights and all this other good stuff, which is very dangerous as well, if that would increase, lower, or whatever it might be.
Sure.
But as I understand it, the criteria was kind of what was reported, limited to just the fatalities.
Haven't these folks ever been to South Florida? It's terrifying down there, folks. It's fast and it's crowded, and there are a lot of oblivious people on the highway. Louisville. There's not a lot of traffic here, really.
Yeah.
Compared to other places, it's.
I know. Well, I know it's out of the country, but if you really want to see dangerous driving, go to Rome.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the cab drivers. They'll get you there, but you may be 2 years less of your life by the time you get there. It's frightened to death. So.
All right, we're going to get 5 topics in, maybe 6
Hey,
today.
there we go.
We have about
Moving on.
6 minutes left in the show. Let's go on to, we talked a little bit about it a minute ago with the overstep of Frankfurt into the county and city, but this week Kentucky legislature has taken up a step that would lead to a possible restructuring or even splitting up of JCPS. Current resolutions were filed on Tuesday that would create a task force to study how to create an effective school district. Good, bad? What does that mean for the future of JCPS?
Once again, none of their business. I'm sorry that Corey Scholl isn't here today because he's on our panel and he's, in addition to being clergy, he's also the head of the school board. But it's just simply not their business.
Again, like you were saying earlier, I need to get more information on it, but my understanding is we've had this in Louisville before. In the 70s, there was more than one district, and it almost bankrupted the city. My understanding is they're looking at Indianapolis now, who has kind of divisions, whatever, as a model. I'm open to see how it develops, but back of my little beady mind says if we start doing the divisions again, you're going to have the East End, lots of money, et cetera, the West End, not that much money, South, kind of, and you're going to have all these divisions, and I don't know if that's going to be benefiting the children or not. But when you have a mega system, again, we have a JCPS is a school system. In our tradition, again, it's different, apples and oranges, but we have a system of schools, and that makes each little church, parish, school, or whatever like that. It's kind of, they have to follow certain guidelines, but they're within their rights. And so what happens at where I'm in residence at St. Patrick over by Valhalla Golf Course, that what we have there would certainly not work in a South Louisville that has a small school. We have to be able to look at what is needed by that school, but at the same time, the benefits of having a school system, believe it or not, for some folks, I mean, for instance, instead of paying thousands of dollars for a textbook, we can pay hundreds of dollars because of the volume that we order, et cetera. It's a give and take. But I would just simply look at the history so far and say, I would need to hear how this is going to benefit us in modern times, and not just because one party says it's going to do this. Okay.
I think it's a worthy investigation.
Yeah, sure.
This is honest, maybe not wonderful to have to say, but Louisville has for a long time had a notoriously bad school system. And I think parents and students and shareholders, if you will, in this community deserve a decent education. And it has been a struggle for a long time. Again, at sort of a national level, people have acknowledged and seen this. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know that the answer is inherently to break it up, but at some point, it's been long enough, I think the state does have probably a responsibility to look in and say, what's going on? Why can't we get this together? And, you know, speaking to sort of the separation of the districts, in Indiana, we have school choice. We have a voucher system, and it is wonderful for the students. I am a huge fan of it. Your tax dollars follow your student. Right. And one of the examples I use, a single mom raising her kids can send her kids to school with a senator's kids. You can go to school anywhere in Indiana. Your tax dollars go with you, and I'm a huge fan of that. I think it really just causes the schools to bring up their level of what they're doing, and it's good for everyone. It's good for the students. So I think, I'll say again, I think that the state probably should at least look into it and see why we can't seem to get this figured out.
Yeah. That's one thing with the school system here in not just Louisville, but Kentucky, the whole thing, as you mentioned, the voucher system. If we look at all the states around the state of Kentucky, they're benefiting from this. But here's Kentucky saying, no, we can't do this for whatever reason. And I'm still looking, of course, I'm prejudiced. We have a private school system, which we would benefit from it as well. But I don't think to the detriment of the city school system. I don't think so. But.
Very good. We have just a couple minutes left here on Moral Side. Thanks for listening and watching. Coach Jeff Walz was in the news this week.
Louisville women hope to get back on track tomorrow night on the road at Boston College. Jeff Walz was happy to share an NCAA clarification of the play that cost the Cards a game Sunday at Syracuse. Trying to foul to stop the clock at the end of the game is supposed to be just a personal foul and not an intentional foul, which was how it was called.
We can only take care of what we can take care of now that's in front of us. And, you know, as you move forward, you hope something like that's not something that costs you the opportunity to host the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, a top 4 seed in our league. There's a lot of things of ramifications at the end of our season that could come from that. But at the same time, I've said it. I mean, we did not do things ourselves that could have helped us win that game. But it's nice to get an interp like this to then at least I know I'm not crazy.
We started with sports. Let's wrap it up with sports. Okay. This week, Louisville was fined $20,000 by the ACC after women's basketball coach Jeff Walz said this about a controversial call. It was a god-awful call. It was the worst. It was terrible officiating. They should be embarrassed. That was the worst call I've seen in my 29 years of coaching. On Thursday, the NCAA came out with a clarification and basically backing up Coach Walz. Nonetheless, the fine must be paid. And how does the coach decide to pay the fine? He's chopping wood in front of his house and selling wood to pay the fine.
Well, let that axe fly. I mean, it's a good example. If he's taking care of it himself, that's giving a good example to the players and to the community. That would be my input.
Full disclosure, for 10 years, my wife and I have been season ticket holders for Louisville women's basketball. And because it's the best game in town, really, the best basketball in town. And Jeff Walz, you talk about a coach who is a role model. He is just exemplary. And I'm thinking, you know, he's chopping wood. Yeah. There's aggression there. And he's dealing positively with aggression. And he was right about the officiating because Louisville should have, they won the game. They were, as the old saying goes, they was robbed.
How does Indiana feel about this?
Well, it was a bad call. I went back and watched it. You know, it didn't make sense. And I think I watched his remarks. I don't think he said anything disrespectful. And I think really he did what he set out to do. He accomplished his purpose because here we are talking about it. If he had gone about this other ways than choosing to say it and take the fine, it probably wouldn't have gotten the publicity. So he's brought attention to the issue, which I think he wanted to do. He did it in a way that seemed respectful enough to me, and I think he was generally right about the call from what I can see.
Yeah. Well, very good. Thank you, panel, for our discussion today. As always, it's great to have you all here. Rabbi Stan Miles with the Louisville Melton School, Reverend David Harkleroad, the South Point Church, and Father Tony Smith with the Archdiocese of Louisville. If you'd like to catch this program again or any other episode, look us up on YouTube and search for Moral Side. And as always, it's always crusade season around here. Just go to the whscrusade.org and see all the many ways you can give. Until next week, thank you and have a good week.